All right, it's time for World Politics, our show that airs on every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. And of course, we've got a number of things that are going on the political front and along those lines. So we'll have some very interesting conversations and all in that space. By the way, for those of you that are wondering, it looks like we are ready for President Grouch because Oscar the Grouch won on that first election, defeating Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and our own Lee Newton Rhodes, and all in that space. So we're gonna have to ask Adam what he thinks about President Grouch and all along those lines. So we're definitely very curious to see what folks have to say about that and if they are excited or not excited. And we did start a new poll because we're going to do this every week where we'll bring in some real political folks, some cultural folks, and of course, one of our own from Pod TV. So this time around, and it's early voting, so it's definitely in the early stages. We've got Taylor Swift, Tim Scott, our very own Adam Lamorello, and Donald Trump. And of course, as we would expect, Taylor Swift is winning. And Taylor Swift is beating Donald Trump, even though at one point they were tied. And Adam, I hate to tell you this, you and Tim Scott don't have any votes at the moment, but that could change at any moment along those lines. But that know that you're perfectly all right with that because you don't mind President Swift either in that kind of way. So I'm going to bring you in and we're going to have this lovely conversation about a number of other things. And Debbie Peterson might be joining us. There might be some other folks joining us as well. So are you ready for President Swift and maybe a ticket with President Grouch? Because apparently Oscar won the last time around and all in that space. But now we've got Taylor Swift running in this latest poll and Taylor is winning. But are we not surprised at that?
Look, I think you said that I had no votes. That's going to change in 2028.
Okay.
All right. The American people can vote for Oscar the Grouch now and Taylor Swift. But you know what? When 2028 comes around, they're going to see someone who's going to make America great again. And that's going to be me.
You're going to run in 2028. So we've decided you're going to run your campaign in 2028. I'm liking this idea and everything. And I know that you already won because you won in the school that you are at and part of that faculty. And which school is that again that you are currently teaching at?
That's Georgia College and State University. Yes, I was elected a faculty senator. And, as part of my agenda, both there and in the White House, we're going to repair our relationship with Russia. We're going to make sure that Russia and the United States are partners.
Okay.
Would you help Russia to attack Ukraine and a few more countries?
Oh, that's terrible.
No.
That's what's happening now. Come on.
Oh,
Is it a comedy show or what?
rude.
Come on, what it is? Is it a circus?
This
You are dying every day. Russia is destroying Ukraine systematically every single day. And you're talking about helping Russia. Are you crazy or what?
Am I crazy?
Yeah, I'm asking you, by helping Russia, are you crazy? Same as your Donald Trump, this idiot? Come on. You should do better than this.
So what is your thoughts, Adam? You had a
Now, talk, please.
I have no response. Let the evidence speak for itself about who's crazy. But I will say this. Okay, Sasha. So the history with Russia and Ukraine is more complicated than
Oh, really? Explain, please.
Okay, well, tell me. First of all, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world.
Oh, come on. All countries are corrupt. U.S. is not corrupt. Come on. You should do better than this.
You're insulting Donald Trump, but you're acting just like him. So what I'll say is that, look, the situation with Russia and Ukraine is far more complicated than the American media.
Please explain.
Okay.
Please explain.
And part of the problem is that Ukraine and NATO were trying to marginalize Russia. And there is a reason why Russia attacked, not because they were bullies, okay, because they were trying to get squeezed out by NATO, and Ukraine was trying to do that through NATO.
By doing what exactly NATO and Ukraine were trying to squeeze Russia. Please, give me an example.
Kim, would you like to respond to?
I'm gonna just listen for right now. I just want to listen.
Okay, well, exactly. So, first of all, when was Ukraine a country? 1991. And what they are, and what would be the reason why Russia would invade Ukraine, because Russia is being marginalized by the international community and completely isolated. Okay, if you had
How? Give me an example. What Ukraine or NATO or both did to marginalize
I just
Russia?
gave you an example, and
Give me.
I mean, you guys can talk about
What
Russia.
is your example? Again, I'm asking you a very direct question. You just said that Ukraine and NATO were trying to marginalize Russia. Give me an example.
Through
What they
NATO,
done by
through
doing
NATO,
that.
I said it previously. Okay, now
What did you say previously? Please remind me. Maybe I missed your wonderful speech last time, so you can remind us. Oh, come on, listen, talk. Talk. You said something of which you have no clue. You don't have any
I'm
understanding
not going to talk
in
to you
this
because
politics.
you are rude. You remind me of
No,
No,
one second.
listen, I will be rude to anybody who is talking nonsense. Absolutely,
Okay.
I will not tolerate that.
Okay.
I'll tell you
So
that.
why don't we talk about some other things?
No,
We've
I
got
was going to get to some
guests.
other issues.
I don't want
as
to go
well.
into the details because this is not being
No, hold on a second.
Okay,
Adam,
let
hold
me
on,
remind everybody
hold on a second.
that
Hold on a second.
Russia and Ukraine, they went apart in 1991. By the way, there was no country as Russia. There was a Soviet Union which united 15.
Yes, I'm not
republics of
stupid.
each
I'm
Russia.
not stupid. I get
No,
it.
listen, perhaps you don't know that. And Russia was
I
just
don't know
one
that.
of those countries. So
These
1991, when Soviet Union fell apart, Russia became independent countries, and so Ukraine and many other former republics of Soviet Union. So from now on, from 1991, December 25th, the Ukraine became independent country, period, full stop. Russia is independent country. They're doing their own things, whatever they are. Ukraine is independent country. Russia is corrupt country. Ukraine is corrupt country, same as United States and France and many other countries. Period. Full stop. Then what? Then Russia is attacking Ukraine in 2014 by taking over Crimea and installing the puppet regimes in Donetsk and Lugansk, so-called Donbass regions. And they installed their puppets, they installed their armies there. And finally, in 2022, February 24th, they started full invasion of Ukraine. And now, right now, systematically, every day, are destroying the country. Ukraine is fighting existential war for its independence. What Russia is doing, they are doing genocide in Ukraine, and actually they are destroying all country, killing its population, destroying its infrastructure. That's what Russia is doing, and you are telling that you want to help Russia?
Hold on a second. Before you answer that, Adam, I was going to introduce our other two guests and everything along those lines, because actually I was having a conversation with one of them, and I'll explain it in a second, that you might be interested in, Adam, and everything. But we've got Kelly Jones, who is does a lot of work around mental health and a number of other issues, including domestic violence, and is also a Democratic, and I think that it's fair to say, but a political strategist, because I don't think it's just strictly Democrats. I think she's done work with other campaigns as well. And of course, we've got Debbie Peterson, who is a former mayor of a California town, and all along those lines. But one of the conversations I was having with Kelly earlier, and this is where I was curious to see your thoughts around this, and we were having it offline and everything, is that she was thinking that one of the things that Trump has done correctly is actually reaching out to the young vote and actually doing some things that can appeal, because he has a imagery of being more energetic than his counterpart, Mr. Biden, and all along those lines. And I was even remembering Mr. Clinton, Bill Clinton, when he ran and played the saxophone and all along those lines. But Kelly, if you would just say some of your thoughts around what we were talking about, and maybe Adam has got some thoughts as well, because I do know that you had mentioned that maybe the Democrats aren't doing enough to reach out to certain communities. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and everything in that way. Kelly? She might have frozen. Don't hear you. Might have to go out and go back in, because Nope, don't hear you though. While she's adjusting, Debbie, any thoughts around that and everything? Just because one of the things we were talking about offline is how the young vote is maybe not being as heard as much as we would like it to be heard. But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around that as well.
Well, I certainly think that young folks are not being heard as much as we'd like them to be heard. And I think it's that age-old thing we've discussed, that they're discouraged. And I think it's unlikely that Trump's going to be able to capture a whole lot of their vote or a whole lot of their interest. He's pretty energetic a lot of the time, and I don't think it's a question of energy. I think it's a question of policies that influence young people these days.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Adam? Because like I said, it was a conversation that we were having offline, me and Kelly, after she had been on a couple of our other shows. And one thing she was talking about was how he definitely comes off as the more energetic of the candidates, even though there's not that much age difference between them and everything. But I'd love to hear your thoughts all in that space.
Well, I think in 2024, we're heading towards a second term for Donald Trump. And the reason is because people's lives were better under Trump than they are under Biden. You may not like his temperament. You may not like his personality. The economy was better. The borders were more secure. Okay. Taxes were lower. There were the lowest unemployment rates for African Americans and Hispanics. We had Supreme Court justices who actually interpreted the Constitution. We had low gas prices, and we had no wars. There's 7 reasons right there. Under Biden, we have high gas prices, a total disaster in Afghanistan, a border that is not secure, a president who's in cognitive decline, and taxes that are once again too high on corporations and individuals. The choice is clear. I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but I'm going to be honest and say his policies were pretty good, and they were certainly better than Biden's. Trump is going to be our president, and that's going to be good for America and good for the world.
I don't think we need Trump as president. I think we can find somebody just as capable and intelligent without. And I've been watching his speeches, and I'm finding a lot of flaws and a lot of, out to me, lies, because I'll go look up and see, did he really do this? And didn't, like when he said that they rounded up all the gangs in New York, and that didn't happen. He said he wanted to, but it never happened. It is happening now. All the gangs are being rounded up, and in history, one of the largest gang roundups just recently happened, and now they've done another one in Minnesota. They did one in New York, over 30 gang members, and they're not just catching them. They're doing something with them. They're not letting them. They're not catching and releasing. So I find that a lot of things he's like yakking about right now, and I did this and I did that, aren't true. They may have been what he wanted to do, but he didn't execute on any of it. Like, he never really, none of the gas and oil ever pumped under him. He said he wanted to, but all of the conditions he put on the oil and gas industry were too restrictive for them, because he said, well, I'll sign this, but you have to make sure all the stuff you use and all the tools and all the resources have to be U.S. made only. And that wasn't going to happen, and he knew it. Also, he knew that they couldn't pump in the U.S. Until all of their hearings and lawsuits were settled, and that wasn't going to happen during his time. So he makes things and manifests all of these things like he's making them happen and manipulating the truth and making it look like it's all happening with him, and it didn't. None of it did. And we went into more debt, our country did, under his term than we did with anyone else in history. And, as much as you want to argue this, we had more fatal deaths in America under his term than any other president that I'm aware of.
Well, I think that there were more Americans who died from COVID under Biden than under Trump. And I want to thank Donald Trump for getting that vaccine out so quickly. But again, you don't refute my points, whether it's on gas prices, the border, the economy, lowest unemployment for African Americans and Hispanics, Corporate
and
tax rate lower. The standard deduction doubled. The economy and the world, since we had no wars, of course, was more stable and more prosperous under Trump than it is under Biden, under Obama, under Bush.
So
So
I'm going to
Hold on a second.
the gas
Let's see.
prices, because there was a misconception about why the gas prices were risen. And a lot of people said it was a shortage, and there wasn't, because when that happened, we had been pumping for 2 or 3 years because of COVID and not using any of it because of all the global shutdown. And I sat in on some of these meetings. Nick is very well aware that I've sat in on these global leadership meetings for gas and oil, some of the largest meetings in the world. And the first thing they said was there was no shortage. And the next thing that happened was the executives decided they just wanted to line their pockets more and give themselves some bonuses. So they personally jacked up the prices because we have no cap on gas pricing. We have cap on every utility in this country, but we don't have a cap on the resource for utilities, which is gas. And I don't understand that, unless it's just a handshake deal between politicians and the oil industry. I mean, I just think it's wrong that everyone is blaming a president for something. I try not to blame President Trump for all the COVID deaths, but he was president when they occurred. And when this country had to shut down, he was president. Most other countries that were ran by women did not have to shut down. Japan did not have to shut down, though some of them smaller countries. They knew how to manage things. And he could have managed it all without his ego, but he didn't. So I'm not going to say that things were not better during then. I wish that our interest rates would go down.
Hold on a second, Adam. I wanted to see if we could actually hear from Kelly, because he was having the technical issues early and everything. So, Kelly, any thoughts around this? If you can definitely see if we can hear your voice and everything, and some of the things that you might be thinking as well. Still don't hear you.
Well,
still don't hear you.
All I'm going to say is Kimberly just admitted that people were better under Trump than under Biden.
I did not. I said there were more deaths.
No, you just admitted, and you can go back and roll the tape, that they were better under, and that is true. And you didn't refute any of my points. And as far as those COVID deaths go, here's how COVID deaths are counted in the United States. If you die of a gunshot wound or in a motorcycle accident, but you tested positive for COVID, you're a COVID-related death. The numbers were inflated. It was politicized. It was a joke.
I don't think it was a joke or political size any more than there was just a lot of deaths. He could have handled that situation so much better, but he didn't. He allowed his ego to get into his way. He could have hired the pandemic team back. We could have kept the people employed in this country. Instead, we issued PPP loans to rich men that were already rich, and then we waive it so they don't have to pay it back without any means of like what we normally charge people when we charge off debts to them. They're not taxed an income either. So, normally when we charge off a debt to someone, we also add an income, and they're taxed as if that's income. And we didn't do that. So these PPP loans, billions and billions and billions of dollars, were given away to rich men who were already rich, congressmen, senators, and then they turn around and waive it. And everyone says, oh, Trump didn't want to do this, but it happened. That's all I'm saying.
It did happen. You're right. It happened. The border was secure. We had a better economy, lowest African-American and Hispanic unemployment rate, lower corporate and individual taxes, doubling the standard deduction. Hey, no wars. And like you said, people were better off under Trump than Biden. Kimberly, I agree with you.
No, I didn't say that. I said I can't say it's better or not. I said that we had some things that were better, but the border is, I don't think, as big of a problem. One of the world's worst criminals actually flew in here. They've arrested him. The gangs, MS-13, they come in on passports, fake passports. A lot of our crime occurs in the airports, not just the borders. So we have an issue of people coming in illegally, but not just the borders. And the worst criminals are coming in through the airports. A lot of our drugs are smuggled in through the airports as well. And this is some research that I helped do with Homeland Security at one time.
I did recall.
Isn't borders.
Hold on
Adam,
one second and
the worst
everything, because I
criminals
think
come
Kelly was
in.
trying to come in, so we're going to try to do things a little unorthodoxly and all in that kind of way. So, Kelly, if you had some comments that you wanted to make, then that we'll do it the unorthodox way and all along those lines. So, Kelly, if you had some things that you wanted to share and all in that space. Share and all in that space.
Okay. One thing that
All in that space.
okay. One thing that
All in that space.
one thing that
All in that space.
can you hear me?
Hold on a second. I have an idea. Hold on. Hold on 1 second. I know what I can do. Hold on. Too much data. That's not working.
The Ethernet is not with us.
Now I
today.
know Debbie agrees with me. So Debbie, can you just
No, I don't agree with you at all. In fact, I'm biting my tongue, probably a bit like Sasha. I think
Sasha, have you calmed down?
I think it's very easy.
For
for
you,
us-
yes.
I think it's very easy for us to give credit and place blame on presidents who, in fact, inherit situations. And I think the question is how they deal with what they've got, not how they deal with, how they work with what they've inherited. And so I think many of the things that you're citing are things that Trump inherited. I think there are a number of things that he incited. And when I'm hearing him these days, I don't hear him talking about policy. I just hear him bragging. I just hear him arguing about the latest indictment or the latest accusation or his latest accusation. I don't hear the man telling me what he's going to do.
Debbie, may I ask you, what do you want to hear from the man who is
From Trump? What do I want to
pathological
hear?
loser? He lost
Oh, how
Oh.
rude.
father's money, $400 million by the end of the 1999. He was penniless. Not only that, he was in debts of $250 million. How can you even think
What I
about
want to hear from Trump
Man.
is that he's going to ride off into the sunset.
Why? Look at how
That's the
people were
line from
doing
the
under
race.
Trump.
That's what you want to know really what I'd like to hear from Trump. That's what I'd really like to hear
Because
from
you
Trump.
don't like Trump because you hate
No, I
Trump
don't.
personally.
I never
Yeah.
have, but it's not
Because you
I've
don't
never
care.
liked Trump.
You don't care about
Never
the
liked
fact
him.
that people were doing better under Trump.
Oh,
Instead,
this is all
you
cliche.
care-
Adam, you know that this is all bullshit. Come on.
Are you getting
People
upset
don't
again?
believe- You know what?
Is
You
this
say
another outburst
life was
coming?
better. Okay, listen, Adam. He created the huge debt from $15 trillion. He raised it up to $23 trillion. That's how he kept the taxes lower, by bringing US farther and farther into the debts. That's all really what he's done. There is no miracle. Of course, if you will charge so-called credit card and accumulate more and more and more debts, then you can make life of Hispanics better and blacks better and these people better and so on and on and on. But there is a price. And US is now loaded with debts, which now because of the pandemic and many other factors went even higher. But Trump was one who really initiated the spiral. And I don't understand how this man, who was twice impeached, lost seat, the presidential election, lost Senate, lost the House. He's pathetic loser. How can you even discuss?
look,
Never mind all those indictments and
Your
all this.
your personal insults don't.
No, it's facts. Everything
Well,
what
I
just
listen to
said,
you.
they're
So
facts.
can I talk with these outbursts? Really, none of you have refuted the 7 reasons that I cited.
have.
And as far as Kimberly, you admitted that people were better under Trump.
No,
So-
Debbie
I
did.
said I've refuted them.
I don't think that. Well, I don't think that you did,
your
Debbie.
opinion.
But we can respectfully disagree. As far as the indictments go, The indictments are so obviously politically motivated. And
Not
as a
true.
lawyer,
No, that's
are
not
you going to
true.
get mad again? I mean, really. What I'm trying to tell you is that as a lawyer, I can tell you the indictments in D.C., the indictments in New York, and the indictment in Atlanta are either going to get dismissed or overturned on appeal. They're so politically motivated. These indictments are political persecution, just like the media relentlessly persecuted this man in a way that I've never seen. But what he did for the American people was substantial on the economy, on the border, for African Americans, for Hispanics, okay, for corporations, for individuals. You guys don't refute that.
Wait a
Instead, you
second.
hurl
If
these
it's so
personal
true,
invectives
how
at
come
Trump
you lost
and you yell at
election?
me. Well, I care about the American
I'm
people.
asking you.
It's
So
obvious.
Adam and
It's
Sasha,
so
hold on a
great.
second. We actually
How
have,
come
and
you
I think we
lost
can actually
election?
possibly
I
hear
want to hear
Kelly
from
this
Kelly.
time and everything.
Hi.
Kelly, you had some. Hey,
Yeah, I want to say one of the things that we're missing is that Donald Trump, no matter how you want to cut it, slice it, whatever, is a phenomenal marketer. And we have a lot of individuals right now who are just not engaged in politics for whatever reason. You know, it's just too cumbersome because the simple fact that they don't, you know, they haven't looked into politics beforehand. So now you're asking them to take on a whole wealth of information and try and dissect it. So I think that Trump has a phenomenal gift of just captioning things. And with his captioning, if you're not really paying attention to the details, then yeah, you can get on the Trump bandwagon. In reality, Obama had put together a phenomenal plan to protect us in case of a pandemic, but that was something that Trump dismissed. In fact, Barack Obama had put forth a tremendous cushion to help us. And during Trump's regime, we went into, I think it was $8 trillion worth of debt, like $8.1 trillion worth of debt. So the bottom line, if somebody's not looking at all the details with regards to a situation, yeah, they can be easily misled. I'll give you an example. My background is marketing. That's why I'm talking to you about marketing. And we were looking at putting together something for American Express. And what they explained to me is, I don't know if you remember that commercial with Dentyne. And with Dentyne, they would say 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Dentyne. So what they would do is they would take 1 through 5 and they would look at it. And let's say 1 through 5 had 3 out of 5 dentists. And then they would look at 6 through 10, another group of 5, and they had 2 out of 5 dentists. And then when they got to, let's say, 40 to 45, they got 4 out of 5 dentists. So they could take that 4 out of 5 dentists when they got to 40 to 45 dentists and use that as 4 out of 5 dentists. That's what you can use with marketing. You can skew it any way that you want. So when you have individuals who are not necessarily engaged with the entire political process, we're using snapshots for everything. That's why Snapshot or whatever it is, TikTok and the rest are working so well until Snapchat. If you are a genius with those 5-minute blurbs or 5-second blurbs, you can win. But when you look at the details of what Trump has done, when you look at the number of individuals incarcerated, when you look at the number of the rate of recidivism, when you look at the number of criminals that he released versus the other presidential candidates, when you look at the divisiveness, when you look at the racial outlash with regards to what happened in Virginia and several other places, when you look at January 6th, when you look at all these tensions that are escalating right now, when you look at the fact that America has a 1 in 36 rate of autism, the world has a 1 in 100 rate of autism, other wealthy countries have a 1 in 136 rate of autism, you know that something's wrong. The US has a 1 in 9 rate of ADHD, and the US has the world has a 1 in 20 rate of ADHD. When you look at the de-escalation of what has happened with mental health, when you look at what has happened with regards to crime, when you look at the fact that people don't want to go to the malls and shop anymore because of what has happened and what has escalated with crime, you have to think of where was the start of it. So yes, Trump, during the Trump regime, we lost a lot of gains. But what I will do, because I have to give him credit where credit is due, he is a very, very, very good marketer. And if you're not looking at the details, it is very easy to fall in love with the words that he is emoting. So I think that the Democrats have a challenge with trying to find a way to not give so much details. I mean, Democrats are very, very smart. You look at the you look at the GPAs of Democrats, and you look at the GPAs of some of the other candidates, and you'll see they are very, 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 very smart. And with that being said, because they're so smart, they want to explain everything, they want to defend everything, and people who don't have an interest in politics, they don't want to listen to all the details. You know, politics is one half emotion and one half intellect.
Well,
And
you know,
and so, I mean, I know that you're saying a lot of things. I would love to hear from some of the other people as to what their thoughts are. I mean, I know, Adam, I know you've got a lot of opinions and a lot to express, but why don't you hear for 2 or 3 people who have something different to say and then respond to all of us together?
He kind of has been. Adam has allowed each of us to kind of say, I think you were in and out. At the
completely
time.
emotionally abused by Sasha. And Debbie didn't agree with me for some reason. But what I would say to you, Kelly, is you make a lot of really good points. Look, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. Not the first time, not the second time. But when I'm looking at the presidency and looking at the candidates, they are imperfect choices. But when I consider what Trump did in terms of the effect that it had on the American people, the economy, the border, on African American and Hispanic employment, and I look at Biden, the less imperfect choice, reluctantly, is Trump. And I'm still not going to vote for him because I don't like the man. But as a matter of intellectual honesty, he is the better choice between the two.
Hey, Adam, just really quickly, and this is actually, Nick, I'm glad you joined us because one of the reasons I had told Kelly to come in is because you had something on the news show that she was interested in hearing more about, because you mentioned this idea of a mental health efficiency test, for lack of a better term, and all along those lines. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, because the mandatory mental health evaluations. And when I mentioned that to her, she was wondering some of the same questions I had, which is how would we do that and how would that happen and everything. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as to how we could have mandatory mental health evaluations, because she has done a number of research in that mental health lane, for lack of a better term.
Well, you do the same thing on mental health as you do in physical health. This will give the doctors some metrics as to doing evaluation and find out where on the spectrum the individual lies. Right now we have 0, and that does account for a lot of the violence that takes place in the United States. And we're not addressing it. And this is the problem I have with both candidates. So to a certain extent, I actually agree with Adam. In other words, and here's the problem with the Democrats. They're not giving us a choice. They're giving us an octogenarian who, speaking of mental health, I'm not sure if he can pass one. So it's really, I agree with Adam that the Democrats are going to lose. All the polls I've done, the Democrats will lose the election. And you know whose fault it is? Their fault. And the reason it's their fault, they do not allow any mobility at all in their party. It's a stuck party. They have old people. Dianne Feinstein. Who the heck is she? Who's that other lady? Nancy Pelosi.
Hold on one second, because I definitely hold on a second, because I want to hear from Kelly about that, because Kelly's actually worked with some of the political forces and is actually
waiting for the Trump presidency to realign. And you know I'm gonna blame it on. I'm not gonna blame it on Donald Trump, because we already know he's a liar. He started off his campaign. I'm gonna build a wall and Mexico's pay for it. He's a liar. Doesn't matter. It's the Democrats' fault that they will lose the election in 2024 because they refuse to help young people gain support in the United States of America. So when they lose the election, they can only appoint to Chuck Schumer and all their clowns that exist there, and they will lose the election. So I agree with Adam. Get ready for
Hold on a second. Hold on a second,
What
Sasha.
about Mitch McConnell? Is he, how old is he?
Mitch
Mitch
McConnell?
McConnell?
He's older than Barry. He doesn't
There's a
belong
bunch
there.
of old codgers there, and I know there are some who would say that's not very nice. They are old. I'm 67. I think I've earned the right to call them old when they're 80 something or 90, and they're too old. It's time for them to allow others to move on. It doesn't matter what party they're in. They're in both parties, and I know because I've looked at that. I've had people talk about term limits, and of course say that the best way to enforce term limits is with your vote. Every 2 to 4 to 6 years, you have an opportunity to enforce term limits. It's up to us. Anyway, I think they come in both political parties.
Yeah, but what we're seeing right now, the polling we're doing on Pod TV on LinkedIn, Trump beats Biden every time I run a poll, every time, not even close. Okay. And if Trump ran against anybody, including Nikki Haley, who's a member of our own party, Trump would lose. If the Democrats put anybody up there, they're going to win. But they refuse to do that. They refuse. They're so blindsided. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to pay for it in November.
Hold on a second. Kelly had a point you wanted to make. Kelly, go ahead.
Goodbye, Democratic Party. Welcome,
And
Donald
Kelly
Trump.
has actually done
That
some
was right.
consulting with the Democratic Party. So, Kelly, your
He
point.
needs to do some big, heavy consulting on this one. Go on, Kelly.
I wanted to let a couple of people speak. So first of all, I wanted to mention the whole thing about the Democrats will not let young people, will not support young people. Well, I think that Biden did something with college debt reduction or elimination. So that is in one way that I believe the Democrats were trying to advance things for young people. With regards to the Democrats being, I was trying to write the notes. There was something you wrote. I couldn't remember. Oh, the average age. I did an assessment a couple of years back. I think it was the last election or before the election. And one of our topics of conversation were that the Democratic Party, the average age of, I believe the House of Rep was like 30 to 40 years older than the Republican Party. So yeah, there are more senior candidates in the Democratic Party than there are in the Republican Party. But once again, I go back to what I said beforehand. Perception is reality. When you look at the Democrats and you look at the Republicans, the age between Trump and Biden it's not huge. We're not talking 20, 30 years. What we're talking is perception. So when Trump gets on the stage, he's got the energy, he's there, he's ready, etc. When Biden gets on the stage, it's a little bit more of a feeble image, and his responses, he stutters, stammers, that kind of stuff. Remember, Ronald Reagan wasn't the youngest when he was the president as well. So I think it's a perception challenge. And I think the Democrats have an opportunity with regards to that. That comes to, once again, imaging. I mean, have we ever seen Biden do anything that looks young? Have we ever seen him dance? Have we ever seen him cook out on a grill? Have we ever seen him do, go get on a sailboat? Have we ever seen him do anything that shows some type of life or some type of vibrancy? What we see is him behind a podium. And sometimes we see him in a less than commanding presence. So I think that's one of the things with regards to him is regards to imaging. I think with regards to, seeing him on a college campus and once again, doing something with more vibrancy. I think there's another challenge with him and also Kamala. I think that we're not using one of the strengths that we have, whereas Kamala is younger and is vibrant and could bring in a larger group. So it'll be interesting to see how those dynamics play out in this upcoming election, if they really use everything that's in their quaffer to make them have a stronger presence. I mean, Kamala's husband, he is an attorney within the music industry. I mean, my God, think of how many young people are in that industry. Why isn't Biden with maybe some of these young candidates, once again, making him a more vibrant candidate? So yes, one is imaging and two is simplify the message. I think hope we remember. I think 999 we remember. I think, make America great again we remember. I think when you make the message too complex and there's too much to research, when people are at a snapshot mentality, when the average American has an attention span of 8.25 and a goldfish has an attention span of 9.3, when you look at that kind of stuff, I think Democrats need to simplify it, make it more engaging. The young people that I've spoken to said, they want some life in the party. I think that Biden and Kamala can do it. I think they need to come up with a strategic marketing plan to do it and make it happen. And yes, Democrats do put forth a lot of older candidates, but age is not the thing because Donald Trump is not 22.
Well, I mean, I think those are really great points, but I think there's a third reason, and that is you still have to look at the substance. I don't know how many times I have to say it, whether it's gas prices, low unemployment rates, a great economy, no wars, lower taxes, a secure border. When you look at the impact on the American people, it was better under Trump than it was under Biden. And they're both imperfect. And I don't think any amount of marketing is going to change people's minds. And I think the indictments have created the kind of backlash that's going to affect turnout in Trump's favor. The bottom line is,
I do agree with that.
Trump than they were under Biden. Yes, I'm not going to vote for either of them, quite frankly, because I don't like them. But when you look at two imperfect choices, the less imperfect one is Donald Trump.
Hey, just really quickly, because there's something that Kim brought up and everything. I kind of got to the one that Nick brought up, but are we all afraid of this notion of a war between the U.S. and China? Because definitely that is something that I know Kim brought up as a talking point and everything. And I know that some people are going like, is this actually going to be a cultural war? Is it going to be an actual war? Is it going to be an economic war? What kind of war are we talking about?
Or,
and is this
or was it a rumor? Or was it a rumor? That's the other thing I have is
Right.
there's stuff going around right now talking about, China is preparing war against us. I mean, that is not something I would like to see. None of us would like to see happen during any presidency.
I don't see that happening, but when you have somebody, with all due respect to Kelly, when you have an 80-year-old versus 70-year-old, let me tell you something. Every year you hit 80, it's like 90. Every year you hit 90, your life expectancy is 50% to make 91. It's very sad, but in my 17 years, I did estate planning law practiced law for 39 years, did a lot of estates. But we noticed, unfortunately, a marketable decline when you hit that for most people. When they hit age 80, you're going downhill and regressing at a faster rate. The sad part about Joe Biden, whether you guys like it or not, he is an octogenarian. He will lose this election. I agree with Adam on that. The Democrats need to regroup fast and find a candidate very quickly who's younger, has energy, and can actually lead the country. And if they can't do it, they're going to exit the national stage. My bet, and I'd be all in with Adam, Trump will be your next president. Adam said it, and I have to agree. And it's not because Trump's a great person. He isn't. He's full of warts. It's because of who the Democrats decided to put up in their infinite wisdom, and nobody challenges Uncle Joe. I just don't get it. And the guy Kennedy, he's horrible, so forget him. Don't you guys have one person? This is a population of 330 million people. Don't the Democrats have one person that they could actually put on stage and can do something? No, because the old people will quash them, and they're going to get what they deserve in November, which will be a Trump presidency.
You know what? Biden was having.
I agree with Adam. And all my polls, and Adam, I've tried to change my polls. I send them out all the time, and every time, Biden gets smoked. Not even close.
Hold on a second. I think that Sasha had a point, but I think Kelly wanted to
I'd
respond.
like to make a point.
They're going to be suing for peace.
First of all, earlier Adam was talking about the huge blunders by Biden when he took his U.S. Army out of Afghanistan. The process was started by Trump, by the way. It was his idea to take U.S. Army out of Afghanistan. However, I'm curious. He was president for 4 years. He controlled the Senate, the House, the presidency, of course. So how come he never took U.S. Army out of Afghanistan, but just mentioned the process and voted for the process, but left it to Biden to do that? That's real nonsense. I don't understand that. Now, I would agree that Republicans actually, for what Democratic Party today represents and its Geschäftsführer Biden, it's very easy election for them to win as long as they will not put Trump to fight Biden. Trump is the only person that Biden is going to beat. Not because Biden is a genius, no, because Trump is a too easy target with all the indictments, the bankruptcies, the impeachments, just name it. It's so easy to attack him that all what he's going to say, election was stolen. Okay, what else you want to say? Election was stolen. Okay, what else? That's all what he's going to say.
Well, I mean,
But okay, but Adam, wait a sec. I agree that he will retain his base. We are talking about what, 30, maybe 32%? Okay, that's all he is. Nobody will touch that. Okay, Democrats have their own base. Let's say it's 30, maybe 35%, maybe even more. Okay, let's give them that. So now the independents are going to decide, and independents are so easy to be explained what Trump stands for. The election was stolen. Let's make America great again. What else? It's a talk of a 7 years old child. That's all. What I think he has basically a mentality of a 5 years old child. So it's impossible that Trump will beat Biden one-on-one. Just it's not going to happen.
Well,
I think it would be interesting to see, because last year I worked the polls, right? And that's the POLLS, right? And when I worked on the polls, what I found was when you were looking at the persons who came in and bought the ballot, got the slates before they went in, you were looking at one Democrat who was maybe dropped off by an Uber and would pick up the ballot and go in to vote, right? When you were looking at the Republican slates, you were looking at 5 or 10 people coming in at a time, taking the one ballot and going out to vote. So now you've got one person versus 5 person. You multiply that by 10, you've got 10 people versus 50 people. So that was the trend that I saw, is that a lot of Democrats were coming to the poll alone, and a lot of Republicans were coming to the polls together. One of the things that I've heard in speaking to young adults, and that's what I do. I'm a podcaster. My podcast has approximately 70,000 downloads per show, but I'm a podcaster and I talk to young people left and right. They are looking for a candidate with energy and a candidate that can simplify the message. And so what happened was, when the Republicans came in with energy, I'm talking about state candidates, not Biden and Trump, but I'm talking about when the Republicans came in with state energy in our state, a lot of times they won races that we knew were going to be run by the Democratic Party, because they had people who were very passionate about winning the election. So if Trump runs against whomever, well, I'll put it this way: the candidate who's going to win is going to be the candidate that brings in the most passion and excitement, because you can't win it with 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. You've got to win it with 5 people coming to the poll together, 10 people come together. It's got to be a collective effort to get it done. When Kamala Harris joined the Biden ticket, we noticed that people were standing in line at the polls, 5 and 10 groups of, 5 groups of 5 and 10. So groups from fraternities, sororities, and other civic groups, 5 and 10 at a time. So the only way you're going to get that, the way you're going to get people talking and excited about it, is if you bring passion and energy. And the fear is, and I was on a recent call sponsored by the Democratic Party with members from the American Indian community, from the Latino community, and the African American community. And all 3 groups said that they were not moved by what was going on with Biden and the Democratic Party, because there's no passion, no fervor. And what they saw was groups which are traditionally divided, meaning like Latinos, which are some vote Republican, some vote Democrat. They were really interested in seeing, what who the Republican candidate would be, because Biden is not exciting them. They were really interested in seeing who the Republican candidate is going to be that was for Latino, American Indian, and for the African American community. What they were saying is they're not 100% sold on the Democratic Party. So that means that, with that being said, you've got to bring in a candidate who brings some energy, who brings some passion, and brings a message that you can understand. So if the Democrats get together, and this is groundwork.
I think
it's not Joe Biden. We know where we're not going to find it. It's not Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Someone else. And you've got to find someone quickly. Joe needs to sit down. Even if he said, "I'll bring in Gavin Newsom," okay, bring the guy in, because the thing is, Joe is just OTH, over the hill, buddy.
Wait, it's not Joe Biden. It's who Joe Biden brings with him. It's Joe Biden's presence, his image. Is there an opportunity to save Joe?
You're not going to change his image overnight when the guy can barely walk. I mean, this ain't happening.
Or talk.
Him and Trump are too old. We need fresh,
can only do
young people.
You
We
know,
need new candidates. You know what? Get rid of the Democrats and Republicans. I am so sick of this uneducated mentality. It is just so stupid that people think the only two parties we are allowed to have or can work with are Democrats and Republicans. What happened to the brains of this country that we just get a human or a non-party affiliated so there are no party favors? It is just pathetic that our society claims that we're so intelligent and the best we can do is the same old World Series baseball game every year. You know, the same.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's important is that this is going to come down to turnout, and the indictments are actually going to help Trump because of the backlash they've created because they are so politically motivated. But unlike a lot of other elections, here we have a clear contrast based on their records. When you look at Biden's 4 years, when you look at Trump's 4 years, whether it's the economy, the border, jobs, Trump wins. And I think that's going to swing independent voters. And I think it's going to result in an increased percentage of African-American votes and Hispanic votes for Trump. Trump wins in 2024, whether we like it or not. And as far as what you think of Trump, look, everybody is flawed. In 1996, I voted for Bill Clinton. And when the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke, honestly, I didn't care because I thought he was a good president. I didn't think I had any right to judge him. I don't look at the person or the personality. I look at the impact. And the impact, when you contrast both, is in favor of Trump.
I think that the indictments do help Trump. Look at Martha Stewart's favorability after she was arrested or spent time in. I think that a lot of what Trump does smart with the marketing is he can go out to people who've been formerly incarcerated. Right now, we have a 68% rate of recidivism. So he can go out to people who are formerly incarcerated and say, hey, look, you know what? I know what it's like to be pursued when you're innocent. I know what it's like to be the victim in the system. I know. So if he can come in with that relatable message, yes, he is going to get more persons, whether they be black, white, blue, yellow, or green, that have had difficulty with the law. So yes, those indictments are actually a win, believe it or not, for Trump with getting with bringing people across party lines, let's say. Well, the other thing that you mentioned was, because I try to answer multiple things at one time. The other thing that you mentioned was no party person. The reason why it's easier to do a Democrat or a Republican is because bottom line is once you get into office, you need to pass bills, right? You're going to need to go across party lines to get some things passed. But in reality, you got to pass bills. You got to move things forward. So if you are an identifiable Republican, if you are an identifiable Democrat, then presumably you have a base that can help you pass bills, move laws, and move the country ahead. So that's why I am kind of for having a candidate from a party, because the bottom line is we don't want to get stuck in a rut. We don't want continuous government shutdowns. We don't want the continuous impasses that we see. We want to be able to move forward. And the way that that's done is when you have clearly defined parties, because when you have, let's say, a Republican and a Democrat, you kind of know who's going to be in favor of certain bills being passed. So if you are at a point where you need an additional 6 candidates to side with you to get a bill passed, you kind of know where to go to get those additional 6 candidates. So I think having a Republican or a Democrat candidate is very favorable as far as moving us ahead and not getting in that thing where we're continuously stuck.
I see where you're coming from on that position, but I think it's a pathetic way that we run this country to think that we just can't be humans and find the right policies and what needs to be done. And like someone had mentioned earlier, let's hear what you're going to do for us. All right. I don't want to hear what you said you did for us that you really didn't do for us, or what you had planned to do for us but didn't do for us. I want to hear the game plan. I want to hear the step-by-step mathematical procedures of how you're going to get us out of this debt, how you're going to make sure that if a pandemic hits again, that we don't run into the same problem that we had last time where we ended up giving all the money to the rich white men anyway. And, and then forgive their loans. So I think that we need to really think things through a little bit and realize, maybe that'll be 10 generations from now before we can get out of this mentality of, red and blue. Maybe it's going to take some time. But I think that that's really sad that we have to sit there and say we're not going to get any policies pushed through. I think we need to find someone who's a uniter and not a divider. And Trump is definitely, he's always I. And then his last thing is and when we win, we're going to destroy them. And I'm like, who's them? Is them the people that didn't vote for you?
Well, I mean,
really kind of
When he
pathetic.
wins, he's coming after Adam. That was
he's certainly passionate.
He's
But
coming after.
you want to talk about what people do? Let's talk about
He
criminal.
didn't vote for Donald, so he's coming after
didn't
you.
vote for Donald Trump, buddy. Your airplane's going down
Look,
just like Putin.
Well, Kelly brought up
down.
something about recidivism rates, and on a related
They're
criminal
high.
justice issue. I want to see a debate. Who signed the First Step Act? Donald Trump. Who signed the Crime Control Act of 1994? Joe Biden. Trump's going to win because Trump's impact is more beneficial to the average American than it is under Biden, and that is a simple fact.
Who instituted
So
the first law?
And I'm going to vote for.
to protect victims.
I'm going to
of
vote for Ross
domestic
Perot.
violence? And I bet Kelly can answer that one. Kelly,
I didn't hear the question.
who instituted the first law to protect victims of domestic violence and maintained it and kept it going and helped prevent recidivism?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. Even though I work with domestic violence, I don't know. But
It was
I,
Biden. Biden
Richard
did it.
Nixon?
Biden,
Okay,
no, Biden instituted the very first, he wrote it and instituted the very first law to help victims of domestic violence. And every year he goes and makes sure that it gets everything it needs to protect the victims.
and I will say this, Adam, that you have to understand that America is not two people. We're millions and billions of people that live within this continent. Or
No, we're two
even
people
outside
right
of this
now,
continent.
Trump and Biden.
Outside of this continent. And so what happens is whatever Trump may institute, sometimes we're not going to see the results of what Trump has done until years and years and years later, because there's an evolving change. There's a continuous change. But the question is, who was the catalyst for that change? And when you look at where we were prior to Trump being in office, and you look at some of the changes that he put forth when he was in office, and you look at what is now happening, you have to realize that there was some type of change mechanism or thought process or laws or bills put in place. With that being said, as long as Republicans can keep the message light and not really look at the depth of or the core issues or the core catalyst for change, I think that they have an opportunity. If Democrats can find a way to put a chronological map in place, nothing too overwhelming, not a whole lot of details, that kind of stuff, I think the Democrats win hands down. But they've got to find a way to get that messaging out there to help people understand where the catalyst for change came about. And I apologize for not knowing about, again, like the Biden.
That's
and
right.
When you
We'll
talk
have a
about-
talk about it. I'll educate you some because that's a lifetime for me.
When you talk about the
research.
catalyst for change, where is your endpoint? When do you say that enough years have passed where you can make that judgment? I think it's speculative at this point. And as far as the election goes, I think that the average American is going to base it on, am I better off financially than I was under Trump or Biden? The contrast is there. There is a precedent, and Trump wins. And I think that wins the day. But we'll see what happens. I also think California should not be allowed to vote because California has become completely liberal, where those 50, how many electoral votes? Oh my gosh, the disadvantage to the Republicans.
We'll have to see what
California has-
happens next Tuesday because we're out of time. So we want to thank our guest and thank all our viewers in the United States of America and also the people around the world that watch the Pod TV network. And we'll see you next week on World Politics. Bye-bye.